Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast, your ticket to all things college football. Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? Join us as we talk college football from the national championship to college rivalries to bowl games to the Heisman Trophy to which conference is the best. We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between.
What is up? Welcome to the GSMC Football Podcast on a Wednesday today here, middle of the week talk with your host, Tom Dougherty. As always, this podcast is brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network, the college football edition today on a Wednesday morning, or whenever you're listening to this lovely podcast. As we do video of these podcasts, it's on demand whenever you want to listen. You'll have to tune in, make sure you tune in at a certain time, whenever you want. You could download this podcast on the GSMC Football Podcast channel. We're going to have our own separate college football channel in a little bit, but right now we're still doing the college football edition of this football podcast. You can also listen to Jesse's shows. He's on here every day as well, so you could find his episodes along with mine in the football podcast section of wherever you listen to your podcast. You can also find the baseball show if you want to listen to me talk about baseball. I do that Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays as well. GSMC Baseball. Also do fantasy football Tuesdays and Thursdays if you want some NFL news and fantasy football tips, as that is coming around the corner soon as well. All right, jumping right into it for the college football talk today. We're going to go over the comments made by David Shaw on the CFP, which actually I tend to agree with a lot, what he has to say. We're also going to talk about recruiting for next season, as there are teams getting some very good news, as they have some of their topper guys that they've been trying to court for some time, make decisions. And obviously some teams are going to be scorned, and the one team they decide is going to be very happy that they're able to get the talent that they wanted to their campus. So we'll go over that and later in the show as well. So we'll talk about that in just a little bit. Also, ESPN came out with their power rankings for the entire nation. Looks like this right now, preseason. I'll give my comments on that, and then probably give my own version of the power rankings and give you the differences to theirs, because I'm sure there probably will be a little bit of differences to theirs. All right, so here going into David Shaw. I mean, he's talking about how they should pay greater attention to how the schedule lays out. Basically, they should, instead of just looking at strength of schedule, he's saying that you should look at when they had buys, when did they play this team, who was injured. I mean, I don't know about injuries might have a different thing to it, but he's kind of urging the CFP committee, college football playoff committee, to kind of do more of a broad look at a team's resume. Look at their entire schedule. Look at when they played, what time they played at. Like Stanford last year had a 10 a.m. game in San Diego, coming right off of I don't know why they lost that game. I wanted to say they're coming right off like a tough Notre Dame game, even though I think that game was coming off like a blowout when they blew out Rice, and they come in to that San Diego State game last year in the morning, get beat down themselves. I mean, they didn't lose by that much, but they still lost to an inferior team. So, I mean, from a smaller conference, so you can't be doing that when you're Stanford trying to win a tough Pac-12 conference this year, or even last year. It was tough, and this year probably won't be as tough as last year, probably because you don't have a Sam Darnold or a Josh Rosen down in LA. Even though, I mean, UCLA wasn't doing much last year, and then USC had Stanford's number, beating them twice last season. So, I mean, David Shaw, his comments when he was talking last week. I mean, he said, or this week, he said, and actually, this is actually getting a report from Heather Dinich, who is I was talking about the lady who goes on ESPN and does the college football playoff. Like, she gives more of the ins and outs of actually what they're trying to decide and trying to predict what's going on. Her name's Heather Dinich. She's a great reporter for ESPN, and she does some good work on the CFP college football playoff. And she was the one doing this reporting on David Shaw, who did sit down yesterday with ESPN to do a pretty good sized interview. Shaw was quoted saying, "How the schedule lays out may be more important than the strength of schedule. What I mean by this, if you look at USC last year, to play 11 straight games without a bye, all Division I opponents, and no 1AA opponents, which means they did not play Furman or Citadel or." They didn't play UC Davis. They didn't play San Diego State. I mean, they didn't play San Jose State. Actually, I think San Jose State might be a D1A. But no, they didn't play any 2A teams. They played all Division 1A teams without a bye last week, 11 weeks straight. USC did, and he's kind of urging. I mean, that's actually coming from the coach of a rival school. Continuing his quote here, he said, "Without a bye, all Division I opponents, no 1A, AA opponents play right into the Pac-12 championship game and win that one. That to me is more impressive than just having a strong schedule, but then having a Week 7 bye or Week 8 one AA opponent, which kind of gives you a break," which is true because who does that? Who does a week? Well, I don't even know. Not even Week 8. They do it like Week 11. Alabama does. Most SEC teams, especially if they have a big game, like a big rivalry game up the next week, Alabama will play like this year. I think they're playing Citadel before they play Auburn in the Iron Bowl. So, I mean, there's lots of schools that will kind of put a 1AA team right before a big game. They're called cupcake games. I mean, they even put the graphics up on ESPN these days now where it's kind of turning into kind of a joke kind of situation where, no, they're playing these easy games. Yeah, they are playing these easy games. I mean, last year was the first time that USC had to play the entire regular season without a bye week. And, of course, the two losses it did have were on the road at Washington State and then at Notre Dame last season, too. So, I mean, they did end up beating beating David Shaw's team, Stanford, in the Pac-12 championship game, and then were slotted at they finished number 8 in their. They won the conference, so that's how much the CFP really cares about conference champions. They don't care at all. They put them. I mean, not putting them in the top 4 to put them in the tournament is one thing. Playoff is one thing, but putting them beneath a 3-loss Auburn team that didn't even win this conference is kind of a joke. I mean, not that many people pay attention to the actual rankings after after the top 4 teams. I mean, hey, maybe the 5th or 6th team because they're the ones that are the first ones out. So, like last year, Ohio State or Wisconsin last year, Wisconsin won their conference. I mean, so he's saying USC finished number 8 right behind 3-loss an Auburn team who had a bye week between 2 road games versus Arkansas and Texas A&M last year. So, I mean, that's what David Shaw is trying to say. Hey, these guys don't have breaks. These guys aren't. You should look at how the schedule is laid out and the process of the schedule versus just the teams who play them. Because you can play them at any week, at any time, coming off a bye week, coming off of an easy road game or a home game against a 1AA school. They don't really look at that. They don't look at what games lead into other games. Like I said, Alabama, who plays Citadel, I think, before the Iron Bowl this year. Who does Auburn play before the Iron Bowl this year? I would not be surprised to find if it's a bye or if it's again a 1AA school that is going to act as kind of a cupcake. Honestly, let's see. Before they play Liberty. They play Liberty College at home. They play Liberty College at home. I wonder how much Liberty is being paid to be basically a practice dummy in that week. I know they do play a good non-conference. They do play a good non-conference game against Auburn. I mean against Washington. They do the one against Alabama State. Woo, and then they roll into SEC play with LSU. But they also play Southern Miss in the schedule as well, in between Auburn and in between Arkansas and Mississippi State this year. So there's your fourth. The SEC is the only conference that has 4 non-conference games, because they only play 8 conference games. And so that's what we talked about before in the show, saying that Nick Saban and now I think what was it? Not Gene Chizik. That's the old coach. Gus Malzahn and obviously Nick Saban has been saying it for a while. They want to try and get it to a 9-game SEC schedule, and I don't need to see why they can't do that. Is kind of beyond me. Why they can't do that, I have no idea. Whether the SEC likes having their schools pay small colleges to play them. I mean, at least they are making one of their games. One of their non-conference games are kind of becoming forced upon them now to play another Power 5 school. So, like Auburn's playing Washington. I think LSU is playing. I know Alabama's obviously playing Louisville. Whoop-de-doo. LSU is playing somebody too. They're playing Miami. So there you go, Miami LSU. That's one of the big kickoff games on ABC over in Dallas. It's going to be at Dallas at Cowboy Stadium, or AT&T Stadium. I get it right. So most of those schools are going to be playing those big non-conference games, but they also still get their easy games kind of mixed into their schedule in the SEC. I said they play. Auburn plays Washington, which is good. It's a good matchup. We kind of make or break the year for both of those teams, or at least get them off to a good start if they can win that game. And then they go into, what did I say, Alabama State. They have 2 SEC games, and they go right into Southern Miss. That is another cupcake game, and then they go the rest of their SEC schedule. But then they get another break before the last week of this season. Before Alabama, they playing Liberty College. Woo! It's just SEC scheduling. How they can equally. I mean, that's what David Shaw is saying. It's calling all this is all of the same point here. It really is all of the same point, saying that, hey, these teams are easily, number one, they're getting a bye. Number one, they are still getting a bye week. And number two, they're getting these cupcake schools spread out through their whole schedule versus the Pac-12. And look at Stanford's schedule this year. Stanford football. Oh, by the way, one of their 3, not 4, but 3 non-conference games every single year is against Notre Dame. And Notre Dame has a good program. So, I mean, it's not a cupcake. You have one of your non-conference games is automatically going to be a tough game every year. Looking at their schedule this year, so they play their cupcake games this year are. So they did take a little bit of a page out of the book. They do have USC sandwiched in between 2. I mean, they have San Diego State again. That's not going to be an easy game. I mean, Rashard Penny is gone, so they should be able to get that win. Then they have USC, and then they play UC Davis after that. So they do have a bit of a little break in between the Oregon and USC game, with a UC Davis game in between there. But then the gauntlet starts. It doesn't really break. I mean, I think I'm trying to find. They only have 2 non-conference games this year. Stanford does. Or no, there's 3. There's the Notre Dame. So they actually get theirs spread out a little bit because they have the Notre Dame game deeper. So they have San Diego State. There's your 1 non-conference game. Then they play USC. Then they play UC Davis. And then Notre Dame, I don't really count that as a non-conference game because they play them every year. So I'm like, oh, amazing. Oh, wow, cool matchup. They're playing Notre Dame. No, they play it every year. Notre Dame plays USC and Stanford every single year. And they rotate, obviously, as to which school they're going to be traveling to and which school will be visiting South Bend. So it looks like Stanford's going to be going to South Bend, and Notre Dame will be going to Los Angeles for Thanksgiving this year. As I've talked about it on the show a couple times, that's actually a pretty cool recruiting point for Brian Kelly when he's coming out to California to try and get players to go play for him in Notre Dame, saying, hey, you're going to be able to come out here. They could travel to California every holiday season for Thanksgiving. So whether they're going to go to the Bay Area or down to LA, it just rotates every other year. So we're going to be that's a pretty cool selling point for him to say, hey, you're going to be able to come spend the holidays with your family because we're going to be here that week of the season. So that's pretty cool. But no, we talked about the Stanford schedule, but this is exactly what David Shaw's talking about. So instead of looking at when you play somebody or the bye weeks, know that we're playing San Diego State, a tough. I know it's not. I think they're not division. They're not Power 5 conference, but I still think they're Division 1A. San Diego State at home this year, thank goodness, not down in San Diego. Then you get USC at home and UC Davis at home. So you start with 3 home games, which is nice, but then you go on the road to Oregon, a road game to Notre Dame. Those will be tough little stretch. Then you get Utah at home, at Arizona State, Washington State at home. You get both Washington schools back to back. You have to go to Seattle after you play Washington State at home. So, I mean, then you get Oregon State, Cal, and UCLA. So, and the end of the schedule isn't as tough as UCLA is reloading. Oregon State shouldn't be that good. And Washington, I mean, Stanford's honestly, their tests this year are going to be Washington. Maybe a Utah team will give them a little bit of a run. And then I'd say Notre Dame. I think USC, they should be able to handle this year with a new quarterback. All right, we'll come back after the break and do some more talk on this stuff regarding David Shaw's comments. I'll kind of go back into the article and what in his interview and get some more quotes from that, as well as some of my comments on and thoughts about how this college football season will transpire this year, and about, I mean, I think we're always headed to more and more the more conversation about this whole looking at the coaches speaking out on it and everything with the CFP. We're going to get to a 6 or 8 team playoff pretty within the next 3 years. I think we're going to see the expansion of the playoffs, because it's really just one more game, and we've talked about the scenarios of it and how it will work. You could just kind of they'll figure out a way to do it, and I think it's just going to take a lot of headaches out of people. So everybody, stay tuned, and we'll be right back for the next segment.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
All right, welcome back to GSMC Football Podcast on a Wednesday today here. Just doing some talk on the college football outlook for the season and maybe some changes that need to be made to the college football playoff format. I mean, we were happy to get to a playoff. I know we've gotten one thing down. We need to get to the next point, which is to be more inclusive, or just to be more I think you should rewarding the conference champions a little bit more, because winning a conference title is not easy whatsoever. You got to win your division. If you're not in the Big 12, basically. The Big 12 does not have divisions still for some reason. They have a conference title game, but they don't have divisions. It's basically the top 2 teams play each other based off conference schedule or conference record. But especially in the Big 10 and the Pac-12, the fact that we haven't had a conference champion in the college football playoff, but we didn't have one last year from those two conferences, is kind of I wouldn't call it a travesty. That's a little dramatic, but it's kind of sucky, isn't it? Like it's really hard. It's not easy. To win the Big Ten is not easy. Number one, you probably have to lose. You can only lose like one conference game, especially if you're in the Eastern Division, to make it to the championship game. And then you got to beat a team probably from the West that had a much easier schedule than you, and might be a bit more rested. I don't know. I mean, obviously, Ohio State took care of Wisconsin last year just fine. But the fact that neither of those teams could make it, and you're like, okay, we're going to throw an Alabama team in there because they're Alabama. I mean, the thing is, I was surprised to see that Alabama got in over Ohio State and Auburn, but I wasn't surprised because it's Alabama. I wasn't surprised because it's Alabama. Not at all. So, I mean, the fact that you have the main problem lies in the fact you have 4 spots for 5 and you have 5 conferences. You have 5 conference champions, and one of them is going to get knocked out no matter what. You can put 4 of the 5 in there. One of them is going to still be the odd one out, and then same difference for same thing goes. I mean, if you 2 of them out like last year, and then of course the argument for that is, oh well, Tom, you've had BCS for forever, and there's only ever 2 teams, and you'd be lucky to have both those teams be the conference champion for their respective conference. We've had LSU Alabama before in the national championship game when it was 1 versus 2, which is which is true. That's happened before. We've also had a team that's not even part of the conference make it to a BCS championship game a few years back and get absolutely obliterated. I think that was the last year before they changed the rules, the Notre Dame game versus Alabama. But it is what it is, and we're gonna probably see. I actually like the 6-team league, 6-team playoff personally, because then you get all 5 champions in one at-large team. If you want to do 2 more, you get 2 more at-large teams, then so be it. But I like the idea of putting a real premium on being the best conference champion that there is, and getting the bye. The first and second seeds get a bye. So kind of like in the NFL play, you just play it out like the NFL playoffs, and then you'd have your championship game like that. So I mean, it's still one less game than because you obviously only have 1 group of 6 versus 2 groups of 6 playing to the Super Bowl. So the conference championship game for the NFL would act as if like it would be a national championship game for college if you were to do it the same way. Like I said, on Monday you have 1 versus 2. Number 1 and 2 have the bye. 3 versus 6 and 5 versus 4. You can do home field advantage. You can do home field. You don't have to have a neutral field until the final game, which is the problem. So that's the problem with number 6, the 6-team league, is because you'd want the second round to be at the neutral field so you can get the bowl games involved. So that's why the proponents for the 8-team league, and I'm kind of starting to shift over that way too. The 8-team playoff is so you can have that first round be in the home field of the top seed, and then the next whole second round, the round of 4, basically, like we would be back here. Where we are now, it would be the same thing. Semifinal games happening at the 2 bowls that rotate. So yeah, they wouldn't So you basically if you do the 6-team league, basically you're like, oh, those top 2 seeds, you don't get a home game. You just don't have to play at all, basically. And I think they might be okay with that. You still have the play-in games. There were 3 versus the 6 and the 2 versus or 4 versus 5. But I don't think that's ever going to happen because they're not really we're not really proponents of having teams play extra games, especially when most of those teams are going to be coming off of a conference championship game, which is already a 13th game on their schedule, and then not have the top 2 teams have to play at all. So you basically it'll be one whole game less. I'm trying to think here. What if it's an 8-team league? You're still going to have 5 of the 8 teams play an extra game. I think that they might be the better of they're going to be the 5 best teams in that 8-team bracket. But say like last year, I mean the thing is like last year. Okay, I mean I guess like last year, if you're going to do 1 through 8 last year, the only team that really would maybe have the best rested would have been UCF or maybe actually it would have been Auburn because Auburn did not play in the SEC championship game. No, yes, they did. It would have been Alabama, wouldn't it have been? I got confused here. Yeah, it would have been Alabama the whole time because Alabama did not play in the SEC championship game. Auburn did against Georgia and lost. So Georgia, Clemson, Oklahoma, if USC would have been in there, and Wisconsin, and Ohio State, all would have come off of of conference title games, and then they would have played an extra game, and Alabama would not have. Neither would have UCF, and neither would have. Actually, that's probably it. Because ideally, you do get some of the conference champion losers in there as well, if they're still the at-large teams, which is then again doesn't put as much of a premium on winning your conference unless you want to be a higher seed. That's the thing. You want to win your conference, you get a higher seed. If you're going to still be an at-large team, say it's a 1-loss or undefeated Wisconsin team going against a 1-loss Ohio State team, Ohio State wins, gives Wisconsin their 1 loss, and they both have 1 loss, but Ohio State won the conference title game. They both get into the playoff, and Wisconsin, it doesn't really may not put much of a premium on winning the conference. But then again, you're still not putting a premium on winning the conference because USC won their conference and Ohio State won their conference and they still didn't get in. So it goes back and forth where pick your poison. You want to you're going to take off a little bit of the importance of the conference championship off this way or the other way, because you're still putting major pressure and premiums on the regular season and making sure that you are at least undefeated by the time you reach that conference championship game. So I mean, that's kind of the way I think it's going to be going. 8 teams. It is one extra game, which I'm sure that the NCAA should like because it's more money making opportunity for them. And whether you get a sponsor for that round and you still host the games at the respective schools, the higher seeds, the 1 versus 8. So I mean, looking at it last year, actually let's look at it as if the rankings right now are the CFP rankings at the end of the year. We could look at the ones from last year. So 2018 final CFP rankings. I know it was, well, I don't know. See, I know that Alabama was number 4. I think they have maybe been up at number 1 now. Let's see, rankings for. Oh, of course, they're going to go away because it's all last year. You can't toggle back to. You can't toggle back to 2017. No, I don't like when they don't have historic rankings. Please have historic rankings somewhere. No, I just want the rankings. Oh, that's why I did not get rankings. Great show quality, Tom. Okay, here we go. After CFP. So this is after it's over. So if it was after it's over, was this from last year? Is this from last year? Oh, this is from this year. UCF isn't there. Okay, so if this is after the CFP is over, so Alabama is number 1 and Georgia number 2, and basically Alabama and Clemson flip-flopped. So if it was an 8-team league, you'd have Alabama, Penn State for round 1 in Alabama. That'd be pretty interesting. If this is I know this is not before the CFP. This is after the game. So actually, this is not a bad outlook for this year. But it's Alabama, Penn State, Georgia, Wisconsin in Georgia, UCF, Oklahoma at Oklahoma, and then Ohio State would go to Clemson. So those aren't bad matchups whatsoever. And then say that if it goes chalk, then you just have the same thing as last year, where you have Georgia, Oklahoma, and Alabama, Clemson in a neutral field. So, but then again, Ohio State, they could beat Clemson. They could upset that. Wisconsin, but Penn State. I mean, I don't think that Wisconsin, Georgia. I don't think the other ones. That's really the only upset is you're going to get the 4 out of 5. But coming into this season, I know that. Coming into this season, you're going to still have a lot of those schools are going to be powers again, and you can see that a similar. I don't know about UCF, but you could see a similar ending point like that with maybe a different team other than UCF, maybe USC sitting in there, or Stanford, or whoever wins the Pac-12 could be in there, because that's the one thing you don't see in this whole list is a Pac-12 school anywhere at all. All right. Quickly, I mean, we were getting close to this end of this segment. I just wanted to go over a couple more things. I mean, with pertaining to Coach Shaw, obviously he's got a good point. I love his point saying that you have to really focus on the schedules. There was another coach that who is it that we had comments from this season, or was it one of the committee members from last year? I mean, obviously, last year they look at late wins or whatever it is. Obviously, the difference between last year and from before is difference between Auburn earned 2 November wins against committee's number 1 teams. They did beat Georgia and Alabama. It's just crazy how Auburn did not make it into it last season. I just don't know how that's possible, but it is what it is. But yeah, CFP executive director on Monday, that's Bill Hancock. He did have comments as well, saying the matter of analyzing teams is complex, and the committee goes through great lengths in comparing teams in many respects and comparing their data, and also in comparing schedules. This committee certainly considers every aspect of the team schedule, including sequence of games, sequence of opponents, and sequence of open dates. Okay, well, maybe you can take a little harder look at that, because it's a very easy comment to make, because, oh yeah, we're doing exactly what you're telling us that we're not doing, basically. Yeah, Coach Shaw, we're doing that already. Whatever you're saying, we're doing. Okay, I'm already gonna. Whatever you're gonna say, we're doing it. Don't worry about it. Don't say anything. It's just kind of funny because it's like, oh yeah, no, don't worry about it. We got it. Don't worry about it. We didn't put Auburn in. Doesn't matter. We liked Alabama. We liked Alabama's chances against Clemson better. I think what they're doing is looking for the best matchups possible. Then they did. They found the best matchups possible. I mean, I guess Ohio State versus Clemson would have been great too. You really can't go wrong there. But Alabama Clemson rematch. How do you miss that? You cannot miss an opportunity to do that. So I can kind of see where they're coming from. And conspiracy, it's all about matchups. They don't really care about the product or how good the team was. If it's a good team, we'll throw them in. It's a good matchup. All right, that'll wrap it up for the segment. We'll come back and do some talk on maybe a little bit of recruiting talk as well. I'll continue to rant on this CFP and see how it looks for this season. I know I kind of made a little bit. I've been alluding to my predictions a little bit. We'll also go over the. I know we've talked about predictions and Michigan can be a school that can get in without winning a conference. Or is there another school in the SEC that could do that? Or is there a school in the Pac-12 that could do that? Or do these teams really need to win their conference? They would sniff a chance to get into this tournament. So everybody stay tuned, and we'll be right back talking about that.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA Podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, welcome back to GSMC Football Podcast on a Wednesday today here as I have some more sound or at least quotes from David Shaw that I want to come bring through as we're still talking about this sequencing of games and, of course, the executive director or whatever title he has of the executive director of the CFP. Bill Hancock had his comments and, of course, said, we looked at all that stuff. We do it all. Don't worry about it. We do all that stuff. David Shaw says, in his view, scheduling, it's a quote, a new way of looking at it. I think looking at how difficult it is for the student athletes to play consecutive weeks, and then we're one of the few conferences will play a significant number of Friday games. True. And he said, adding that the Friday night road winning percentages are very, very low. Yeah, because so here we go. Here's a comparison. Let me get comfortable really quick because this might take a while. You're at Stanford. I don't want to take anything away from these universities over in the East Coast, even the Big Ten or the SEC. It always seemingly, I feel like it's SEC against everybody because SEC gets, I feel like they kind of get preferential treatment a little bit at least, and they're the big football power, so it is what it is. But in the Pac-12, you have some very good universities. You have Cal, Stanford, UCLA, USC. Washington's a great school. I mean, they all are. Oregon, they're all great schools. I don't know. You can go party in Arizona if you want to. A lot of the schools are great academic universities, and they also get saddled with a lot of Friday games. What else do you happen to have it on Friday? Oh, is Friday a weekday? Is there a class on Friday? Really? There is? Aw. Yeah, there is. You think Bryce Love is going to miss a class? He could miss a summer class it doesn't have excused absences so he can go to media day. You think he's going to miss class to go to a walkthrough for a game on a Friday night? Really? Or he's going to have to. They're going to have to. They have. It's basically one less day and traveling. Yeah, they're really low. Going to Pullman, Washington on a Friday night is not that fun. It's not. I mean, I don't know what games they play on Fridays this year because, I mean, it doesn't give me the actual days they play. It just gives me the dates. I think, actually, it might give me the actual days. as far as Stanford goes, I know, but I'm not trying to just key on Stanford. I am kind of I lean more Stanford. It's the Bay Area school, but I'm just going off of what David Shaw has to say, and he's a good coach. He's a coach that gets on. There's a reason why the NFL likes him on their draft coverage. ESPN every year, well, seemingly lately they brought him in to be one of their analysts for the NFL draft coverage. So I'm seeing here we go. Friday, this actually gave me the actual days it is on. So they play San Diego State at home on a Friday. Okay, that's not bad. That's a Thursday game. That's not a big deal. So they don't actually play a road Friday game this year. Stanford doesn't. They play a road Thursday night game. But that's you can kind of. I feel like that's a little different because you could prep that a little differently going into that week. But they play at Arizona State. Whoop-de-doo. On a Thursday night, you should win that game. But it is what it is, and coaches can come out and say what they want to say. I think if there's ever a coach to come out and say something that is meaningful, then I'll take it really to heart. It is from Coach David Shaw, because he's a very thoughtful guy and really kind of, thinks about what he's about to say and doesn't really just go out and blab his mouth all over the place. He's, like I said, very thoughtful and very cerebral coach as well. So he has he actually did continue on saying, after stating that obviously the Friday night road winning percentages are very low. These combinations of things really have to be taken into account. I think that will honestly bump up our conference into a certain degree, because it's not just how hard your schedule is, who you play, it's when you play, who you play. Basically, it's not about just who you play and where you play, it's when you play that team, where you play them. A Notre Dame game obviously if you're gonna play Notre Dame on the road, you're probably gonna play them more up in the top of your schedules before it gets nasty over in on the south bend of Lake Michigan, over in Indiana, where the University of Notre Dame is. But yeah, so they you got to deal with it. Pac-12, that's like I said, they don't really get the big pedigree. They had one when Oregon was really good at the height of Chip Kelly and Marcus Mariota over there, going to the college football playoff, being a top-seeded school for years. But, DeAnthony Thomas obviously was very talented as well there for the Ducks. But, they haven't gotten quite to that point yet. They have had major talent. They've had major talent, obviously, down there with the quarterbacks down in the South. Bryce Love, Christian McCaffrey at Stanford. You've got guys up at, we'll see what Dante Pettis can do for the 49ers this year, as he was drafted by them out of the University of Washington. So you have some good. Niners actually have two Washington. They have a Washington State guy and a Washington guy. They have two receivers, one from Washington, one from Washington State. We'll see if those two guys are going to go at it this year on competition. No violence, no inner team stuff like that, but just maybe a little friendly competition between a Cougar and a Husky, because the Apple Cup is a big deal up there. If you don't know what the Apple Cup is the annual game between the Washington State Cougars and the University of the UW Huskies. That'll be a good one. That's usually end the season. As that's one thing the Pac-12 does a good job of. The geographical rivals are really good. Obviously, if Cal and Stanford, UCLA and USC, Arizona State, Washington State, Oregon State, and then Utah and Colorado are right there. So they have a natural geographical rival as well. So you don't really have that other. Maybe a little bit in other schools: Georgia, Florida, Auburn, Alabama, Mississippi State. LSU doesn't really have one. There you go. LSU doesn't have one. And then maybe A&M, but they just got into the conference. That's what the Pac-12 did a good job. It's easy to remember all the Pac-12 schools because they're paired up pretty well. But yeah, that's the way it goes there out west. I think it's a product of a lot of different things. It's a product of the fact that their games start at 10 o'clock Eastern time at the earliest. A lot of the times, it's the fact they said there's not one big powerhouse conference. There's not one big powerhouse team. USC used to be the team. We used to have Oregon. Now we're kind of back in the middle where everybody's either reloading, have young quarterbacks, or we have to wait and see. Or maybe a Stanford team has kind of been underwhelming because they've had hiccups. Like last year, they had a hiccup against SDSU to start the season off. To kind of put a damper on the whole season. Also, injuries to quarterbacks don't really help either. So when you get Keller Chris not being able to really do much, and Ryan Burns not being able to do much, and you have to put KJ Costello in there. That's cute. I think it was a blessing in disguise because you get another year of Bryce Love comes back. You have KJ Costello as a proven starter. You got Caden Smith as a great weapon in the play action in the red zone as a tight end. I think it'll be just fine. But That's Stanford. That's just Stanford. You got a bunch of other stuff. We got 4 new head coaches in the Pac-12. We got 2 in the SEC, 3 in the SEC. 3 guys changed schools in the SEC. Obviously, we have Jimbo Fisher now at A&M, Joe Moorhead at Mississippi State, and then Dan Mullins at Florida. Right? Is that it? I think that's it. Matt Luke is now the official head. He's no longer the interim head coach for Ole Miss as Hugh Freeze's situation. Obviously, we know about that. But then Matt Luke was promoted, and then now he's made the full-time head coach at Ole Miss. So good for him. Looking into this season, but in the Pac-12, there needs to be a team that runs the table. Whether it's going to be Stanford, maybe an Oregon team. Looking at Oregon's schedule. I think if Justin Herbert still had Royce Freeman, maybe they'd have a better chance. But the thing about Oregon is they do a good job of figuring out who's going to be their running backs, and they end up being good ones that get drafted. So look at this Oregon. See, look at that. They put all their non-conference stuff up on the top of the schedule, and then they go right into the gauntlet. So they start three home games against Bowling Green, Portland State, and San Jose State. And then they get Stanford at home. So you start off with 4 home games to start off the season, which means you're probably going to be on the road a bunch during the middle part of the season. They go to Cal. They have Washington at home. They go to Washington State. That'll be a test. They go to Arizona. That'll be a test a little bit with Cole Tate. They play UCLA at home. They go to Utah. That'll be a test. Utah's going to be good this year. Don't sleep on them to win the Pac-12 South. They could be very good this year, Utah. And then they're home for Arizona State, and then have to go to Oregon State for their. I don't know. Do they have a name for their rivalry? I know the Apple Cup is Washington. I'm saying Oregon versus Ohio State. Versus Oregon State. What's the rivalry called? Does it give me anything? It's the Civil War. Of course, they call it the Civil War. The colloquial name for the game between those two teams. And then of course you have the game, or the big game, which is Cal Stanford, and then UCLA USC. I don't think it has LA. There's too much stuff down there. They don't really care about nicknames and stuff. I think it's just USC game. We'll finally get some peripheral people to go to the game that aren't like we're diehard. So they don't even have a nickname for it. It's just UCLA USC rivalry. That's all it's called. It's not even a name for it. And then I don't even think they Arizona State doesn't have one either. Maybe the Battle of the Desert, but let's see if they have a name for their game. And it's interesting. No, I don't think they have a name for their game either. No, they don't. I thought maybe Duel in the Desert. There we go. Sometimes known as a duel in the desert. So we have a little name for it. They had to think of something. Okay, that would have been. That would have been bad if they didn't have anything to go off of that. All right. In the last couple minutes here of the segment, I want to go and give you some updates on the recruiting for 2019, as we always like to do here. I talked about a little bit with the Michigan running back going to a JUCO. He's going to Fort Scott, right? Fort Scott Community College, which is actually. Which was featured in the Last Chance U. Talked about that on Monday a little bit with the fact that they do play. They play that other school, Independence Community College, which is the school that's being highlighted right now, or was highlighted for season 3 of that show on Netflix. All the episodes are available on. All those episodes are available on Netflix if you want to check those out. But those are pretty cool. So. That's going to be a guy who's going to be Emory, I'm sure, facing. Well, if they might go back to that school next year, like they sometimes do. They went to the first school they did. Last Chance U went to the same school twice in a row before they did go over to Kansas to follow Independence Community College. But yeah, so going into the stuff regarding regarding your recruits, as the big running back goes. This is a running back going to Georgia as they land John Emery. As Georgia continues to its little hot streak, as they did get 3 ESPN 300 commits in one day, actually. So they got John Emery, who is second highest commit at number 20 overall. They also were able to reel in the guy who actually was the 2018 class running back, number 1 rated running back, Zamir White, and then as well as the number 3 back, James Cook. So obviously they still already have DeAndre Swift, who was number 6 back in 2017. And now they get this guy, John Emery, coming. He's a 5'10", 5'11", 202-pound running back out of Destran, Louisiana, as he chose Georgia over many other programs, including LSU, of course. So good for him. They also did get the another linebacker, Rayon Davis, out of Apopka, Florida, and another athlete, Makia Tung, who was when you say athlete, which means they're kind of positionless, so they don't really have a thing. So Georgia now up in the number 5 ranked class, led by the number 2 prospect. That's going to be overall prospect, this defensive end Nolan Smith, who's already committed to play in Athens. All right, that'll wrap it up for this segment. We'll come back in just a moment, and we'll do go over the updated power rankings, as well as my opinions on some of these teams and the outlook for their season, as well as, of course, peer at some schedules, as we like to do on the show. So everybody stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
All right, welcome back, GSMC Football Podcast, the college football edition on a Wednesday today. Here, we're going to finish off the show with a little talk on the power rankings of the updated power rankings for the college football around the country. Enough of this West Coast bias, Tom. We talked about the Pac-12 enough, haven't we? Yes, I know. My little voice in my head is telling me that. Except one more thing. I did find out what the rivalry game between Colorado and Utah is called, and it's the best one. It is the best one of all of them. I know the big game's awesome. It's kind of boring, though. I get kind of tired of it. Apple Cups, whatever. But the Utah-Colorado game, after being dormant for 5 decades, was reunited after they both joined the conference. But it's actually a historical rivalry. They played a long time ago, back in the 20s, and have actually played up over... This year will be their 65th meeting, actually, of this rivalry. So it's called the Rumble in the Rockies. Isn't that awesome? I'm sorry, I love that. I know it's kind of cheesy, but I love that. Rumble in the Rockies between the University of Utah and Colorado. So this year it's actually going to be, I think it's going to be in Boulder. Yeah, it's going to be in Boulder, Buffaloes versus Utes. Rumble in the Rockies. So that's going to be, I mean, they're in the same conference they're going to play every year because they do the geographical rivals usually at the end of the season. Let's see, November 17th. That's usually around the end of the season. For the college football schedule. So, Rumble in the Rockies. Had to find that one out. I mean, when I found that, I'm like, oh, I got to tell the people on air because that's great. That's great. I know Iron Bowl is good, and the Egg Bowl between Ole Miss and Mississippi State is cool, and obviously, we know the big game, and I think it's better than the Dust Up. What is it? Dust Up in the Desert or something like that? Is that what the other one was called? Yeah, I got nothing on Rumble in the Rockies. I mean, come on, guys. Rumble in the Rockies. That's I like that. I don't know. I don't know. It might just be me, but I like it. I like Rumble in the Rockies. All right, going right into these rankings here. I was actually kind of surprised to see how high our friends at Washington were. Stanford Stanford's 14th right now. in the country, according to these ESPN preseason college football rankings, which is what we're going to be going off right now. I'm giving my comments. So right now, Alabama comes in number 1. Obviously, I think that they're not number 1 with Jalen Hurts, the quarterback. They're not number 1. They're not. You have to score points. I know they have obviously. You're going to Harris and Harris. I think isn't it 2 Harrises? Damian Harris and there was one. I thought it was Samaje Harris, something like that. Damian Harris obviously is going to be your running back, but yeah, they're always going to have depth. They always seem to have a big running back at Alabama. It's going to do well. So whether it is Tua or Jalen Hurts, they'll have some help in the backfield. But I just think that your quarterback is the general of your offense. I think it's just so much more potential. The ceiling is so much higher with Tua at quarterback. I know he's younger, but he's going to have the full offseason to learn more and to kind of get that mindset as a starter, even though I think the guy already has the mindset. He's been a highly touted recruit starter out of high school. I mean, he went to a good high school in Hawaii, the same one that Marcus Mariota went to, so they know how to breed NFL quarterbacks and to prepare them for the next level. So I think Tua is going to make that next step and is going to get that Alabama team really solidified in the number 1 ranking. Number 2 is Clemson. I know we've had some issues with kind of figuring out whether it's going to be Kelly Bryant this year. I think that, you want to see some sort of confidence from your coach into your quarterback if you're a Clemson football fan, because you got a nice strapping young lad right behind him, kind of looking, hey, I'm here, I'm over my shoulder. I broke all of Deshaun Watson's record, your beloved Deshaun Watson. And the problem with Kelly Bryant is that he came in right after Deshaun. He took a team that already is very talented and did not win the semifinal. Couldn't even get to the national championship game. You beat. The thing is, the ACC is not that difficult. It really isn't. With Florida State kind of down and figuring themselves out and kind of treading water right now, your biggest rival is going to be Miami, and Miami were. Honestly, watch out this year. I mean, I'll tell you right now, Miami's not very farther down than Miami is at number 9. So I mean, I know Clemson's at number 2. It's quite a stark difference, but when we get to the end of the year, I think they do play each other actually in the regular season this year in ACC play before. I mean, they're on a collision course. There's nobody else. I don't see maybe West Virginia. Maybe Virginia Tech with Josh Jackson gets in there and Justin Fuente can really spark that team. Maybe they get in there and try and mix it up in the ACC, but just the ACC is just not that difficult for these power teams. You saw what Miami did last year. In a year before, everybody thought they were going to be good. So, I mean, this is the year they're supposed to be good. In the third year for Mark Richt, for the year he actually gets all of his recruits up in the top of the playing ability of juniors in the junior level right now. And those freshmen he had in his first year now are seniors. So they're going to be able to kind of make some moves. And, looking at the Clemson football schedule this year, I'm trying to see, is Miami on the regular season schedule before the Pac-12? No, they don't play each other. Okay, so they don't play each other this year in the regular season schedule. But Clemson does have a test after that Furman game to start the season off. They're going to be going to Texas A&M. That's going to be pretty interesting because they're going to be facing their old friend from the ACC, Jimbo Fisher, and just probably will be his second game at Texas A&M. I wouldn't be surprised if they just went and punched him in the mouth. It came into Kyle Field and just wiped the floor with them. Honestly, Clemson is just the thing is, yes, their offense is great. They have a good dynamic quarterback. I actually like Kelly Bryant. Watched him play not a lot. He's fine. He gets the job done. But the fact that you're already having conversations and you got Trevor Lawrence right behind you, and you have people like, oh, just start Trevor. Oh, no. Kelly needs to have the confidence. He needs to have the team behind him. He needs to have the coaches' confidence. Obviously, I think that they haven't really named him the starter. They put him as number 1. I thought when they way back at the end of spring practice, they put him as number 1 on the depth chart. But then we're seeing more comments coming out from Dabo Swinney that's not really set in stone. It's kind of just a depth chart just to put out there, but there's still more competition to go, and he wants to see what he wants to see. I think that his if you're a team that's trying to come back, you have all these talent around you. I'm not trying to tell Dabo how to coach. He's a national championship winning coach. He's a great coach. Obviously, he had Deshaun Watson, so that kind of makes it a little bit easier. No offense. But if he's having some sort of question, you need to get in a room with Kelly Bryant and say, Kelly, you see this kid behind you? Just don't look at him as a kid. That is a fire underneath your butt. You are on the hot seat, buddy. I'm sorry, you are. You need. Don't get nervous. Don't press. Be yourself. Play the way you want to play. But just know that we all want you to succeed. We want you to succeed. We are behind you 100%. But just know this is still a program where we need to win games. We need to show our championship pedigree. We came off a national championship. We got blown out by Alabama. And after, is it a fluke? Was it a fluke that we beat them after they beat us? Then we beat them, and then they kicked our butts. Is that a fluke? You didn't do anything on offense. So you need to get some adjustments made. Get with your quarterback coach. Grow, learn more, because we're going to put everything behind you. Because we know that if we put everything behind you, we're not really hedging. We still can hedge our bet. That's the thing. If you don't say, I wouldn't tell that to the kid, but you can keep it in the back of your head. Okay, if your dad was winning, yeah, we can tell him that we're going to put our whole team and everything behind him, our full support behind him, knowing full well, but in the back of our heads that you could have a separate conversation with Trevor Lawrence and hope that. Well, the problem is you don't want to start spreading stuff around your locker room that's going to contradict people. You got to be very careful. Trevor Lawrence saying, you're the future of our program. Just keep doing you. Keep playing well. Keep practicing as well as you can. You will get on the field eventually, basically. And you could just wait. Be patient. Be patient. Be patient. Be patient. And the more patience you show me, the more matureness you're showing. More matureness you're showing everybody. You're showing everybody. So I mean, then it's going to make you even a better quarterback when you actually do get your chance to play, because it's going to be next year, regardless of whether you play this year or not. You're going to play next year for this team. You're going to be the best player on the field, likely, and when we have the offense on the field. All right. Enough on Clemson. Moving on, Ohio State, obviously, J.K. Dobbins is going to be your running back. He's going to probably be the lifeblood of that offense. So obviously, you get Dwayne Haskins is there as the next quarterback, likely. There still is Tate Martell is still there as well, so you can still you get some shake up there. As that's still a decision that hasn't been made. You have three of your top three teams have not. That's the thing. You have an idea. Obviously, you have an idea that Alabama is going to pick Jalen. You have an idea that Clemson is going to have Kelly Bryant come back and be the starter. You have an idea that Ohio State is going to pick Dwayne Haskins, or Urban Meyer will pick Dwayne Haskins as their quarterback this season. But none of those coaches, Nick Saban, Dabo Swinney, Urban Meyer, none of them have come out and definitively said, this is our starter. And the first game is in a month. 30 days, baby. 30 days. Moving on. Ohio State, by the way, they should win the conference. Sorry. They have the best roster. They have the best weapons. They're the best coach. Michigan, get your stuff together. If you can come stun Ohio State, I don't know what, you missed your chance, because last year I think they played in Michigan. I don't think you're going to win in the horseshoe. It's going to be super, super hard to win in Columbus if you're Michigan, and especially when you haven't won in 3 tries with your new head coach. I'm pretty sure this game is going to be it's at Ohio State. So, yeah, good luck with that. Number 4 is Georgia. Love Georgia. Obviously, you get your quarterback back. I don't think there were some inklings that they were going to make a competition between Jake Fromm and the other guy, Justin Fields. So they were going to try and mix it up a little bit, because obviously Justin Fields is a very talented quarterback. There's the only reason why you have him is because he was the number 1 recruit last year from the 2018 class. So, I mean, he is very talented and is going to a program with another talented quarterback who took his team to a national championship game. So that's Jake Fromm. But you got to love what Georgia is. Honestly, I think Georgia is going to find themselves. I don't know. It's going to come down to defense, because the offenses are both good. Alabama's offense is good. Georgia's offense is good. They are going to come down to again, and I hope they play each other. Neither of those teams hiccup. I love Auburn. If I was going to pick one team to be a fan, quote unquote, a fan of, even though we try to stay, we're staying very impartial here. But if I was going to pick a fan of, I kind of pick coaches that I like. I love Gus Malzahn. I love Gus Malzahn at Auburn, and I like Auburn. I tend to root for Auburn a little bit more than other schools, but it's okay. I like Georgia too. Kirby Smart's been great coming in there. He's gonna. The thing with them is he's never going to be on the lower foot than Saban when it comes to defense. I don't think. Obviously, they do lose Roquan Smith this year, so personnel can always trump personnel, but over coaching to a certain extent, because that Auburn gets. I mean, Georgia and Alabama both get major men in there to play defense, but usually it's a little more skewed towards Alabama getting the big guys. But I think Georgia's offense this year could be a little bit more dynamic, and it's really going to come to a toss-up because both Alabama and Georgia are super ultra talented. I think it's going to come down to the defenses and who is going to stop the other team when they play each other. Inevitably on a crash course to the SEC championship game, those two teams. And then rounding out the top five, right here at the end of the show, is Washington. And Washington, Jake, hopefully you're healthy, buddy. I want to see you do well. Go Bulldogs, obviously, both from Folsom High School here in the Sacramento area. As Jake is going to come into his fourth and final season at Washington, obviously kind of hoping he gets a little bit of a renaissance action back from his sophomore year. Obviously last year, after getting dinged up in that Alabama game, had a bum shoulder for a lot of the season, couldn't really drive the ball down the field. Now he tells me he's fully healthy, he's good to go. And so I'm like, when I saw him in town the other week, a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, Jake, how's your shoulder? And he's like, it's good, we're good to go this year. And I'm like, I saw that he's ready, he's confident, he's ready to go. You saw him having some fun down at the Pac-12 media days with his teammates, so good for him, and I'm glad to see Washington back up in the top five in this power rankings. So that'll wrap it up for the show today. Giving you the rest of the top 10, at least for these updated power rankings, is going to go Wisconsin is number 6, Oklahoma 7, Penn State 8, Miami 9, and Auburn number 10. We'll go. We're actually going to finish the top 25 on Friday. I'll do a lot of the show going back into these power rankings as well. So everybody have a good Wednesday. Happy hump day. It is Wednesday. Get through the middle of your week. All right. And we'll be back on Friday. So everybody, we'll talk to you later. Bye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.